It was just boring, right? Like, look, we knew that this was not going to be that exciting of an event, but it felt even more boring than normal. Now, I feel like there's a couple of YouTubers that have already uploaded videos that are like amped out of their mind, and some of them went to the event, so they were there, they felt, this surreal experience of Apple Campus, and I'm sure the event seems more exciting and the products seem more exciting when you're there. I didn't get invited. Thanks a lot, Apple! Just kidding, joke's on you, I didn't even want to go. Okay, so I got some notes here, and let's kind of just run through the event and my thoughts on it. All right, Apple Arcade, let's start off with Apple Arcade. $5 per month, you can share for your whole family with family sharing, so that's pretty sweet. $5 individually or $5 for the whole family, up to 6 people. They brought both Konami and Capcom out on stage. Konami showed off a Frogger game, which is certainly going to be Game of the Year. No, these just looked like pretty bog standard mobile games. They looked nice, they looked polished, but they're just mobile games. The service will be launching November 1st, and they're adding more games in the coming weeks. They did say that by the end of the year, they hope having 100 games, which I think for $5 a month is a pretty excellent deal if that's what you're into. I mean, they're still mobile games, right? So they're not gonna kill the Nintendo Switch. It's not really competing in the same space, but for $5 a month, if you play the occasional puzzle game or iPhone game, I think it's a pretty good deal. There's no ads, there's no in-app purchases, it's just $5, good premium quality games. And I think that's actually really desirable considering how crappy mobile games have gotten in the last few years. So I'm excited for that. Apple TV Plus. Now I know there's gonna be a lot of you saying, well, didn't you just make a video saying Apple TV Plus was gonna fail, you idiot? Yes, I did. And I still think that Apple is not out of the water yet, but I do think that they addressed the major issue that I talked about, which was pricing. It had been rumored that Apple TV Plus was going to be $10 at launch, which just couldn't compete with Disney Plus's $7 per month price. Well, Apple TV Plus will be $5 for the whole family via family sharing, which is up to 6 devices, simultaneous 4K streaming. That is a much better deal, especially at launch when there's only a couple of shows available, 5, and that did end up being true. Where things do get better though is that if you purchase any iPhone or Mac or iPad this year, anything, you get a 1-year free trial to Apple TV Plus. For the whole family. So you buy one iPhone this year, your whole family gets Apple TV for the year. And I think that makes it a much more compelling service, especially as this front-loaded kind of launch is pretty light. There's not many shows, and I think that just makes it a much more compelling service. And hopefully they do well, because the last thing I want is Disney ruling the planet. But even at $5 per month, I'm skeptical they'll be able to compete with Disney, because just Star Wars and Marvel and Disney's got some really crazy stuff up their sleeve. Next, they started talking about the iPad 7th generation. I was actually kind of surprised that this got any keynote coverage at all. Not because it's not a good product that doesn't sell, because I think it does, but it's just so boring. And the update was boring as well. So we're talking about the cheapest iPad, the $329 iPad, which is not to be confused with the new iPad Air released earlier this year, which is kind of in the middle, not quite as good as the iPad Pro, but better than the $329 iPad. Well, now it's even stranger because this new updated iPad brings a brighter display, which was the single biggest problem with the old device. We don't know if it's a laminated display, but the resolution, the color accuracy, and the brightness are all increased. And the $329 iPad now actually has the same PPI as the iPad Air. And the iPad Air is only 0.3 inches bigger. So there's really only 2 benefits to getting the iPad Air. One is that it uses the A13 Bionic chip rather than the A13, which Apple kept in the same $329 iPad. They didn't upgrade that. And then the other advantage is the True Tone display in the iPad Air. But other than that, they both support Apple Pencil. They're both boring as hell. They're both using the same camera, both the same PPI. I mean, it's super weird how close they are. And it makes me wonder, why would you buy the iPad Air? I wouldn't. Next, we move on to Apple Watch. Now look, I'm not an Apple Watch guy. I wear mechanical watches, but I do have mad respect for the Apple Watch. And I honestly think it's probably the best product that Apple offers from a standpoint of there's no other replacement on the market. The Apple Watch is just so far ahead in the smartwatch industry that it's honestly kind of comical. The only watch that I would say is remotely even close is the Samsung Galaxy Watch, but even that is pretty poor by comparison. From a health standpoint, an activity standpoint, and just general polish standpoint, The Apple Watch is just so far ahead of anything, it's incredible. And people who wear an Apple Watch love an Apple Watch. I have a lot of friends who are getting tired of the iPhone and want to move to Android, but won't for the simple reason that they can't take their Apple Watch. And I think that's a big selling point for Apple. The big visual updates happened last year with the Series 4. So this year there isn't that much new. The only real new hardware feature is an always-on display, which I, as a mechanical watch owner, think is a big deal. So you no longer have to do the wrist flick that you used to have to do to get the display to turn on. It's just always on. It is in a dimmed state, but it's always on, and you're supposed to get the same 18-hour battery that you did with the prior watch. Now, a lot of people will probably accuse Apple saying, oh, that seems like a software feature that they've locked to the new piece of hardware to get you to buy the new watch, and it doesn't seem that that's the case. They've upgraded the display to a variable refresh rate, which can downclock to 1 hertz, so 1 refresh per second. And there's a low power display controller inside the watch as well, which allows the display to run at an extremely low power consumption that allegedly was not previous with prior generations of Apple Watch. But that's really the only hardware difference. It is offered in 2 new materials, so now you have a titanium and a ceramic option for $799 and $1,299, I believe, so pretty expensive. And then you can also now mix and match. So before you used to have to buy the base watch with a silicone band and then you could upgrade to other ones. Not anymore. You can choose exactly what you want and they'll ship you your watch as configured. So the size, the case shape and material, and then of course the band, and you can make it anything you want and order kind of a la carte all of these items together, which is pretty dang slick. They still offer the Series 3, so the Series 4 was killed. Series 3 is still available for $199, and the Series 5 is available for $399, Derek?
$399.
$399. And for $399, I think it's a pretty great deal. And now we get to the biggest part and yet the most boring part of the keynote, the iPhone 11. Look, we knew the iPhone 11 was going to be a pretty boring upgrade, but I think it's even more boring than we expected. A lot of the boring features that we thought we were going to get, we didn't actually get. So bilateral wireless charging, which seemed to everyone to basically be guaranteed, didn't show up. It's not there. That's not a thing. It didn't happen, which is really, really bizarre. I really expected that. There's also no 3D touch. So that was rumored to probably disappear. It's gone. So haptic touch is the new norm. I loved 3D touch and I'm really gonna miss it. And I'm gonna see if I can actually use the new iPhones because that was a major thing that I loved. And missing that, even though haptic touch is a decent alternative, is a software fix for missing hardware. And it doesn't fill the same shoes. There's also no AR engine. That was rumored to have been one of the benefits of adding a third camera, but no, nothing there. So those were kind of things that were rumored that didn't actually even become true. Now, things you can expect across the iPhone line, whether you get the less expensive $699 iPhone 11 or whether or not you upgrade to the $1,000 and $1,099 iPhone 11 Pro and iPhone 11 Pro Max, respectively. These are all bad names. I thought for sure they would just call it iPhone Pro 5.8 and iPhone Pro 6.5, just like they do the iPad and the MacBook and the iMac and the everything, but nope. We have Pro and Pro Max. Pro Max. Wow. What a bad name. But features available on all of those devices is of course the new A13 Bionic chip, which is blue line faster. There's no benchmarks at all. They just gave us a blue line, so we're just gonna have to take them on their word that it's way faster than the last generation. And according to them, it's the most powerful GPU in any smartphone ever. I don't know how they benchmark that and in what environments, and I don't know. But there you go, that's what they said. It is true that the rumor that expected that they were going to focus more on efficiency than performance ended up holding to be true. So Apple stated that the major advancement in this new silicon, the A13 Bionic, is that the chip will allow for much better battery life. And Apple's quoting 4 hours better battery life on average. That's their crappy scale that is not really realistic in any way, shape, or form. But at the very minimum, expect at least a couple hours extra of battery life on your iPhone, which is a really nice improvement, especially the XS, which had, I felt, very crappy battery. So yeah, now the iPhone 11 Pro will have decent battery, and the iPhone 11 Pro Max, holy crap, these are bad names, should have excellent battery.
Dolby Atmos, also known as not Dolby Atmos, is available on the new iPhone. They have these new directional speakers, or at least they say that the way they port the audio, which Atmos does all the time. Atmos plays with kind of time delay stuff to trick your ears into thinking that the position of the speakers is different. They're doing the same thing, and they have Dolby Atmos certification, but trust me, this doesn't mean that your smartphone speakers are gonna sound like you're in a movie theater. It's gonna sound just like smartphone speaker, just maybe a little bit better. Wi-Fi 6 was rumored and ended up being true. So we have the new Wi-Fi 6 standard, which is pretty sweet. And then, the iPhone 11 renders were 100% correct. They look exactly like the phone ended up looking. The iPhone 11 Pro and Pro Max do look quite a bit different from the renders that we had, well, the mock-ups that we got here in the studio, and then the renders in general. It has this new kind of formed, machined down glass shape, and then this weird Cyclops looking thing. I still think it's not very good looking. It has the face that only a mother could love, but it does look better than the mock-ups that we had been seeing over the last few weeks. So looks okay, but it's not a beauty. And that's not to say that you can't make 3 cameras look really nice, because the Samsung Galaxy Note 10 I've been rocking, I think looks, look at that. It looks beautiful. And there's very little camera hump at all. And it has 3 cameras, but we'll see how those cameras do. And that really is the focus of these new phones. Oh, right, before that, there's a new U1 chip. So you remember the chip that Apple uses to pair the AirPods? Well, now there's another chip called the U1. This is exclusive to the iPhone 11 Pro, but it is a directional pairing device. And so what you can do is if you have 2 U1 enabled devices, and the expectation is that over time, all of Apple's lineup will get U1 devices, it actually has directional pairing. So if you open AirDrop and you're in, I don't know, an airplane with 50 other people, it will actually pair with the person that you point your phone at. So if I point my phone at this other person who has a U1 chip, our phones will say, hey, yo, we're the people that are trying to AirDrop to each other. Really cool feature. Is it a game changer? No, but it's just another thing that makes kind of this whole iPhone ecosystem really kind of come together nicely across multiple devices. Okay, so let's talk the cameras. This is the big news. This is what's happening. And by the way, Ming-Chi Kuo, the dude's a friggin' legend. He got all of these rumors almost exactly right to a T. There's 3 new cameras on the back. They are 12 megapixel sensors. You have your standard kind of wide angle lens. You have an ultra wide angle lens instead of the rumored telephoto, so Kuo was right again. And then you have your old 2x telephoto that you used to have. So ultra wide angle, and then a telephoto zoom. And so 3 cameras. What's cool about them is that Apple really focused on stating that these cameras are matched. And that means a couple of different things. One is that they're pre-calibrated from the factory. All sensors are slightly different and there's a little bit of variance. So in the factory, they calibrate the color. But what they also do is that the phone takes real-time sampling data and makes sure that the exposure and the color the color accuracy and the white balance are all matched at the same time. So you can smoothly switch to the other cameras as if it were kind of just one camera while you're recording video. So you press record, you can zoom, and it will toggle through the 3 cameras without you even really knowing it. And because the color is matched perfectly, you shouldn't notice a difference. And what they also do is change the positioning of the cameras. So even though the 3 cameras are spatially in different locations on the phone, they're all matched up to the exact same framing. And so again, you should be able to zoom or rack focus and rack zoom on your phone, changing between the 3 lenses without it ever look like you're changing 3 lenses. So it's basically like one camera that has super wide angle functionality and super zoom functionality, which from a theoretical standpoint is really cool. Now, that doesn't mean that you're going to be shooting your latest motion picture on an iPhone 11, just as you never have in the past. But it really seems that this year the cameras are the focus. There's also an improved front-facing selfie camera. You can now do slow motion selfies. Apple called them Slowfies. What? No. We're never going to talk about that again. But you can record all 4 cameras actually simultaneously at 4K. They use a really cool demo on stage with Filmic Pro, which is a really great $7 app, and it allows you to do multicam. So it would record all streams from the camera, and real time and in post, you could choose what camera you wanted to take from, which makes your single camera really feel like it's more than one camera, which is really pretty cool. And then they also have audio zoom. That was directly stolen from Samsung. I guess this has been in work for months, right? So for years, probably. So I'm not saying that Apple stole it from Samsung, but Samsung had it first. And I'll be interested to see how it works, because on the Note 10, it does work, but it's a little gimmicky. So hopefully Apple's implementation works a little bit better. Other than that, though, I would expect pretty much everything to be as it was before. Apple did offer a night light or night sight functionality. They didn't really talk about this much at all. They kind of mulled directly over the top of it. I think it's because everyone else has already done it. Huawei's got one, Google's got one, Samsung's got one. And so they didn't bring it out and act like it was some revolutionary feature because, you know, other phones already have it. How good Apple's will be remains to be seen. I have a really tough time believing it will be as good as Google Pixels, but it also does it real time, which is pretty cool. The Pixel requires post-processing. That may mean that Apple's isn't going to be as good, but it will be faster and real time. So it'll be interesting to see how that plays out. Photos, we're just gonna have to wait to see how things look. Video, it looks like Apple, well, they never really lost their crown as the video smartphone king, but they're gonna retain their crown. And hopefully in the photos department, the stills department, where they have fallen behind, I think Samsung and Huawei and Google, they can regain some ground. But that's really about it. I mean, 3 phones, $699, and then $1,000 and $1,099 for the Pro and the Pro Max. I still think the iPhone 11 is probably the best deal. I will be picking up an iPhone 11 Pro in the new midnight green color, which I'm not sure if I like it just because it's new or because I actually think it looks good, because a lot of people seem to think it's hideous. But I like it. Although, I mean, look, I got green oh, that's really hard. I got green shoes on, so I'm just trying to match over here. Anyways, this is probably the most terrible video I've ever made. Yep. Thanks so much for watching, and as always, stay snazzy. See you later, folks.